The hostess's words hung in the air like frost. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrington, but we're completely booked." James Harrington, worth $8.7 billion, owner of buildings taller than this entire restaurant, stood speechless in the crowded entrance of La Maison, watching as families and couples celebrated the final hours of the year while he faced another New Year's Eve alone. What happened next would change two lives forever. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more life-changing moments that remind us what truly matters. James Harrington checked his Patek Philippe watch, 10:47 p.m. on December 31st. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, the air perfumed with truffle and champagne. He'd spent the day closing a $2.3 billion acquisition, forgetting to make reservations anywhere, assuming his name would be enough. It wasn't. "Perhaps another night, Mr. Harrington," the hostess offered with practiced sympathy. "We could certainly accommodate you tomorrow." Tomorrow. When the celebration would be over. When the calendar would have already flipped to another year he'd spend building an empire no one would share with him. "I understand," James said, his voice betraying nothing of the hollow feeling expanding in his chest. At 48, he had everything and nothing. His phone buzzed, probably his assistant confirming his private jet was ready for his Aspen trip tomorrow. He ignored it. As he turned to leave, a voice called out from somewhere in the dining room. "Hey! Over here!" James looked up to see a man in his late 30s standing at a table for four, waving enthusiastically. The man wore a sweater that had seen better days, and beside him sat a girl of about 10, looking curiously at James. The hostess frowned. "Sir, do you know Mr. Parker?" James didn't. But something in the man's genuine smile made him nod. "Yes. Old friends." Noah Parker hadn't planned on inviting a stranger, especially not one wearing a suit that cost more than his monthly rent, to join their New Year's celebration. But he'd overheard the exchange, recognized the name from business magazines, and seen something in the billionaire's eyes that reminded him of himself 3 years ago after Lisa died. Loneliness had a universal face. "I'm Noah," he said, extending his hand as James approached their table. "This is my daughter, Emma." James Harrington, the billionaire replied, his handshake firm but uncertain. Emma studied him with unfiltered curiosity. "Are you really a billionaire?" "Emma." Noah scolded gently. James smiled, his first genuine smile of the evening. "I am. Though tonight that doesn't seem to matter much." "We have an extra chair," Emma said. "Dad always reserves 4 spots. One for him, one for me, one for Mom in heaven, and one for whoever might need it." Noah felt his cheeks warm. "It's just something we started doing after my wife passed. Holidays can be tough when you're missing someone." James stood still, visibly processing this information. For a moment, Noah worried he'd made a terrible mistake. "That's the most generous thing I've heard in a very long time," James finally said, his voice slightly rough. "If you're sure I'm not intruding." "We insist," Noah said. "Besides, Emma's been wanting to ask someone about investing her allowance in the stock market." The unlikely trio settled into conversation as easily as old friends. James discovered Noah was a high school physics teacher who coached robotics on weekends. Emma was a budding scientist with a collection of rocks that she insisted were geological specimens. "So what does a billionaire do on New Year's Eve?" Emma asked, dipping her bread in olive oil. James considered the question. Usually, he attended exclusive parties where people talked about money and acquisitions, where connections were currency and genuine conversation rare. "Nothing as nice as this," he admitted. Noah shared stories about teaching, about the brilliant kids in his robotics program who couldn't afford college, about the grant he'd been trying to secure for new lab equipment. "The school board keeps cutting our budget," Noah explained. "Last year I spent about $4,000 of my own money just to keep the program running." James listened, truly listened, perhaps for the first time in years. Here was a man who had so little compared to him, yet gave so much. Who had suffered real loss but created traditions of generosity from his grief. What about you? Noah asked. Family waiting at home? James swirled his wine. My parents passed years ago. Never married. Work became everything. That happens, Noah said without judgment. After Lisa died, I threw myself into teaching. Emma was the one who reminded me there's more to life. Emma grinned. I made him promise one adventure every month. Even small ones count. What was December's adventure? James asked. This. Emma gestured around. We never eat at fancy places. Dad saved up all year. James felt something crack inside his chest, the realization that this father and daughter had invited him into their special tradition, their once-a-year luxury. As midnight approached, the restaurant dimmed the lights. Servers distributed party hats and noisemakers. James hadn't worn a party hat since childhood, but when Emma handed him one with stars and moons, he placed it on his head without hesitation. 10 minutes to midnight, Noah said. Time for resolutions. I resolved to get straight A's, Emma declared. And to finally convince Dad to get a dog. Noah laughed. I resolved to say yes more often to things that matter. He looked at James. Your turn. James had never shared his resolutions aloud. They were always the same: increase market share, expand into new territories, grow the bottom line. I resolve, he began slowly, to remember what I learned tonight. That wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you share. Noah raised his glass. To new beginnings. They clinked glasses as the countdown began around them. 10. 9. 8. James watched Noah put his arm around Emma's shoulders. 7. 6. 5. He thought about his empty penthouse, his empty calendar. 4. 3. 2. 1. Happy New Year, the restaurant erupted in cheers. Emma blew her noisemaker directly at James, then dissolved into giggles at his startled expression. Noah laughed too, and James found himself joining in, the sound unfamiliar but welcome. When the check came, James reached for it. Noah shook his head. This one's on me. It's our tradition. Please, James said. You've given me something money can't buy tonight. After a moment, Noah nodded. Thank you. As they walked out into the cold night, snowflakes beginning to fall, James felt reluctant to say goodbye. Can I offer you a ride home? We're just a few blocks away, Noah said. The walk is part of our tradition too. James nodded, understanding the importance of their rituals. I'd like to help with your robotics program, if you'll let me. No strings attached. Noah hesitated. That's generous, but... Dad, Emma interrupted. Remember your resolution? Say yes to things that matter. Noah smiled. You're right, as usual. He turned to James. Those kids would be grateful. So am I. James pulled out a business card. Call me next week. We'll figure it out. As they prepared to part ways, Emma suddenly hugged James. Thanks for sitting with us. Mom would have liked you. James felt his throat tighten. Thank you for waving me over. Noah extended his hand. Happy New Year, James. Happy New Year, James replied, shaking Noah's hand and realizing he meant it. For the first time in decades, he felt hopeful about the year ahead. 3 months later, James sat in the back of a high school gymnasium, watching Noah's robotics team compete in the state finals. Their robot, emblazoned with Parker Precision, navigated the course with remarkable agility. The team had new equipment now, and a fund for college scholarships. James had made calls to colleagues, securing internships for the seniors. But his biggest investment wasn't financial. Every Sunday, he joined Noah and Emma for dinner. Sometimes they cooked at their modest apartment, other times, James hosted them at his penthouse, which now featured Emma's geological specimens displayed prominently in the living room. Last month, they'd adopted a golden retriever puppy named Newton, who divided his time between both homes. James checked his watch, not to rush away to another meeting, but to make sure they'd have time for ice cream after the competition, win or lose. He'd learned from Emma that celebrations weren't just for victories but for efforts, for showing up, for trying. As the Parker precision robot completed its final task, the crowd erupted. Noah caught James's eye across the gymnasium and gave him a thumbs up. Emma jumped up and down with her teammates. James applauded until his hands hurt. His phone buzzed with business calls he'd return later. For now, he was exactly where he needed to be. The billionaire who once couldn't get a table had found something far more valuable than any reservation. He'd found a place to belong. That New Year's Eve changed everything for James Harrington. One simple act of kindness from a stranger who had every reason to keep his extra chair empty had opened a door James hadn't known existed. He still ran his company, still made deals and acquisitions. But now, his calendar included science fairs and movie nights. His home contained laughter and occasionally, dog hair on his Italian suits. And every New Year's Eve, they returned to La Maison, James, Noah, Emma, and an empty chair for Lisa. And sometimes, when the hostess announced they were fully booked, Noah would stand and wave to a stranger who looked like they needed somewhere to belong. Because that's what family does, it expands to include those who need it most. If this story touched your heart, remember that kindness costs nothing but can be worth everything to someone who needs it. Like and subscribe for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity, and that sometimes the most valuable connections come when we least expect them.